Are we about to get into the next pandemic? This article by ABC News says, CDC preparing for possibility of increased risk to human health from bird flu. Quote, though currently circulating H5N1 viruses do not have the ability to easily spread to and between people, it is possible that influenza H5N1 viruses could change in ways that allow them to easily infect people and to efficiently spread between people, potentially causing a pandemic, the CDC wrote in its summary. The CDC is the Centers Control for Disease and Prevention. They have already found 2 cases in America alone. And they're a little bit concerned about that, even though right now they say there's really no evidence that it could spread among humans. What's important now is how can you protect yourself? And we want to review what happened over the past pandemic, the past health crisis, which started in 2020. And many of you know a lot about this. You have undergone a lot of pain, a lot of misery, and it was a very tragic time for the whole planet. We lost millions of people, millions of lives, and it was a really terrible time for businesses, for personal freedoms, and there was a lot to learn from this too, right? We learned a lot of lessons from this past health crisis. Do you want to have your plan B in a country where you can move easily and freely because past data, past experience suggests that that country, whatever we're talking about here, whatever country it may be, allowed you to enter and leave the country pretty flexibly in the past? And just taking a look at the planet as a whole, we can see that certain leaderships in certain countries had different systems in place during the past health crisis. And we really have to make some distinct differentiations in this video. If we take a look at Europe, the continent with the highest median age in the entire world, we saw how certain countries like Spain, Italy, France, Austria, Germany, they had very strict mandates, lockdowns, and some countries even considered vaccine mandates. Like my native country, the country of Austria, considered a vaccine mandate. Now it didn't happen because it would have been unconstitutional, but they considered it. You know, they followed up with this for quite some time to get more and more people take the vaccine, which did work out pretty nicely for them. Other countries like Italy, you know, one of the countries with the highest median ages in the entire world, had to do what they had to do to protect their ever-aging population, because from what we know is the people with a higher median age are just more vulnerable to a virus than younger people, healthier people, people with no preconditions. So this is very, very important. But if we take a look at the East, where the median age is much lower and the people are definitely healthy, they're slimmer, you know, a lot of them are in great shape, but yet they had much stricter lockdowns, mandates, and they shut their borders. They didn't even let their own citizens enter during certain phases of the pandemic. They didn't let anybody in for certain phases of the pandemic, nothing really. So if you had a residence permit and you wanted to get in, you couldn't get in, couldn't get back in. And this is not just about Southeast Asia. If you've followed us on this channel, you've seen me make videos about it before, where I hammered certain countries for their really inconsiderate policies, especially towards their own citizens, their legal residents, people who were not allowed to enter during certain phases. And that was just crazy. It was nuts. I mean, if we look at Australia, given how Australia handled the past health crisis, and given the past entry requirements, import requirements for animals, you know, if you wanted to import animals into Australia, you know how challenging it is. You cannot get a dog into Australia unless your dog is from a rabies-free country. You know, there are very few exceptions, far in between, like New Zealand, Singapore, and a couple more, where you can fly your dog into Australia and not have your dog taken into quarantine, assuming that all other conditions are being met. Australia has always been extremely mindful and like over worried about its biosecurity, always. You know, it's always been like this in Australia. So given this fact, you know, and a couple more things too, it doesn't surprise me at all how Australia handled the past health crisis. In Asia, also not so much, because I had that in my mind, I swear, in like 2017 that something like this could happen, and it did happen. However, I was clear at that point, and I left Asia in 2019, so I experienced the best time. So I'm fine, I have no regrets. But anyway, given how the system works in the East, and given how it played out during the past health crisis, I'm not surprised at all, because it mirrors everything. If you really look at the fine print, which a lot of us oftentimes we don't want to see, because these things are scary to look at. However, everything really, mirrored. Just taking a look at what you can say, how you go about a complaint and all of that. There is really not much there in place that allows you to publicly criticize an official, or that allows you to speak your mind, or even if you have a dispute with a local, you're always gonna lose. All these components, and they really mirror what happened during the past health crisis. But anyway, then there are places, like we said, in Europe, where they were just really, super tight because of the aging population, even though human rights are definitely more respected in Europe than they are in the East, and it's a matter of fact. And then we have Latin America, an interesting place that was very open during the past health crisis, and that has to do with a couple things. First of all, the tourism a lot of these countries get, just the Dominican Republic, Colombia, these two countries specifically, or Mexico, they're heavily dependent on North American tourists, American and Canadian tourists. So if they were to shut down, they would lose a lot of revenues, their businesses, employees, they would starve, didn't have any work, so that would be terrible. But then also from an immigration perspective, and just from a cultural perspective, these countries are just more lenient towards these things. They're not over paranoid about controlling their people. And again, this is in the past history too. And now I can say, well, in Paraguay, the dictatorship ended, I think, in the 80s. I think it was in 89. And that was a difficult time for the country. But since that ended, in the 90s, since the 90s until now, the country is really doing better and better and better. And hopefully will not return to the old path. And then you see other countries, like Mexico, that generally have very lenient policies. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is that you pick wherever you want to live, and you better pick quickly and be satisfied with your choice, because if we enter another pandemic cycle, you will have no time left to choose where to live. So you make the decision now before it starts, not after it started, because then you're again back to the same problems that you were in before during the past pandemic. You don't want that. This is very important. And so oftentimes in life, it's oh, I don't want to go to the gym. I don't have time to go to the gym. I don't want to go jogging. I don't want to play tennis. But then once people start experiencing health problems, they realize, well, I better start going to the gym now. I better start walking. I better start working out. Once people have problems, they usually change. My advice is to not be like most people. Most people will not change until it's really too late. You want to create an option when you don't need it. That's the smartest thing you can do. You don't create an option when you need it because you have no time. And you may not even have the possibility to create it because you are under an umbrella that does not allow you to escape. It's just a matter of fact. So you create that option now if you really want it. And since you're watching this video, you do want options. Since you're following this channel, you do want options. So I recommend you to do it now, and you pick wherever you want to go. This is your choice. You choose this. You make this decision based on your own individual preference. I'm not here to tell you anything. I'm here to tell you about the laws of certain countries, what you can do, what you can't do, but the decision is ultimately up to you. You make that decision. So we're an education channel, but we're also a channel to warn you about certain things, and we want to help you escape tyranny. Tyranny is growing in many places. So consider this if you want to have a plan B in a country, or if you want to have your main base in a country where you can become a permanent resident, where you can own land, companies, then guess what? You can go to a place where that's allowed. You can go to Europe, you can go to Latin America, you can go to North America, and then we're pretty much done. Okay, certain places in Asia, you can do it in Singapore, but very difficult to get in. In the UAE, you can get citizenship, and property ownership is very restricted. And now with certain tax laws, it's still a great country, I'm sure, for networking. And if you want to do business, it's great. Go there if you want. but you also need to consider where you're at. So make this choice. If you want to get more information about the best places where you can get a residence permit easily, then watch the video that is displayed right here. As always, we appreciate you. Thank you so much for watching Nomad Elite, and we see you on the next video.